So, let's check this out. This is The Athletic, and Cathy may have a problem by the time all this is said and done. Now, she did just negotiate this entire new CBA, but one could argue the deal should have been closed sooner.
Adam Silver just delivered a shock that caught everyone completely off guard. When he was directly asked whether Cathy Engelbert would continue as WNBA commissioner after this season, he failed to give a clear response. Not that he wouldn't. He couldn't. After 6 years leading the league, after negotiating 2 collective bargaining agreements, after guiding a period of historic growth, the very NBA commissioner who brought her in suddenly sounded uncertain. That kind of hesitation is not typical. So what's really unfolding behind the scenes?
Well, WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert just finished negotiations to ensure the league has a new collective bargaining agreement in time for 2026 to start without delays. Her future in the role is unclear for now. Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner who hired her, could not say whether she would remain in the job after this season.
The Athletic revealed this story on Wednesday, and Silver's exact wording is critical. "We haven't had those discussions yet with the WNBA board," he said. Then he followed it up with something even more telling. He mentioned that he hasn't had those conversations recently with Cathy, even regarding her future plans or how long she intends to stay in the role. Pay attention to the word recently. That suggests these discussions have taken place before. And notice how he frames it as possibly her decision, not the league's. That's classic executive language that often signals preparation for a transition.
Silver said Wednesday, when asked if Engelbert would be commissioner after the upcoming season. Quote, "I would always say Cathy's done a fantastic job since she's come to the WNBA. Obviously, you can see just in the results, but I haven't had those discussions recently with Cathy, even in terms of her future plans and how long she wants to do."
But this is where things become more complex. Engelbert just finalized negotiations on a new CBA that doesn't even begin until 2026. Player salaries are about to surge significantly. The league has added 6 expansion teams during her leadership. Franchise valuations have skyrocketed. By every standard business measurement, her tenure has been a success. So why does her future suddenly seem uncertain? The answer isn't found in the numbers. It's rooted in relationships.
And some of its fans. Minnesota Lynx star Napheesa Collier publicly rebuked in her September, and other players voiced their support in Collier's comment. Yeah, but the problem is you got a whole league full of disgruntled individuals. So what do you really know? Like, what do you believe here? All right, what do you believe here? There's suspicion around her.
In September 2024, Napheesa Collier, one of the league's most prominent stars, openly criticized Engelbert. Other players quickly backed her stance. And that wasn't a one-off situation. Throughout Engelbert's time as commissioner, she has dealt with what The Athletic describes as a consistent wave of criticism from both players and fans. But evaluating that criticism isn't straightforward. This league has a long-standing culture of dissatisfaction that existed long before Engelbert and stretches all the way to the era of Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark. Everybody remember that? I'm just pointing it out. Adam Silver, however, has been pleased with where the league has gone. The WNBA completed a new CBA earlier this month with substantially boosted salaries, improved revenue sharing, provide labor peace for at least 6 seasons. Quote, "I'm very happy," Silver said, "and I know the ownership is very..."
Consider the environment this commissioner has had to manage. A league where many players are constantly frustrated about something. Media attention, officiating, scheduling, travel conditions, or salary comparisons to the NBA. The list never ends. Engelbert's approach has been to stand firm when needed instead of giving in to every demand. That's actually part of the commissioner's job description. They represent ownership interests, not the players. Still, that stance has made her unpopular in certain groups.
Can't stand? Or do they? Or do they really not like her? Because we only heard from a few little old players, right? A few players in all this that were disgruntled. And maybe they're disgruntled because Cathy won't just roll over and won't tell them to roll over and rub their bellies for them.
Now here's the part no one is openly discussing. There's a growing belief that some of the criticism toward Engelbert is tied to how she handled the Caitlin Clark situation this past season. Clark brought unprecedented attention and financial growth to the league. At the same time, she dealt with physical play from opponents and underlying tension from some veteran players. Engelbert responded in a measured, diplomatic way. Some critics wanted her to take a stronger stance in Clark's defense. Others believed she was already showing too much favoritism. It was a no-win situation. Now look at the results under her leadership. When Engelbert took over in 2019, the WNBA was struggling to stay relevant. 5 years later, the league has just recorded its highest viewership ever. The 2025 expansion draft is generating major interest. Corporate sponsors are stepping in aggressively. The new CBA introduces revenue-sharing structures that could reshape player earnings. These aren't minor achievements. They are transformative milestones. But transformation inevitably creates opposition, especially when it involves difficult decisions that upset influential groups. Silver's comments become even more revealing when you examine them closely. He said, "I'm very happy. I know the ownership is very happy with where things stand in the WNBA." That's present tense. He's satisfied with the current state of the league. Ownership is satisfied as well, yet he still avoids committing to Engelbert's future. That gap speaks volumes. The business side is thriving. The political side is unstable. And in professional sports, politics often outweigh performance.
Franchise valuations and players' salaries rose during Engelbert's tenure, and the league added 6 franchises through expansion, but she also has taken steady stream of criticism from the league's players and its fans. Some of its fans. Minnesota Lynx star Naphesia Collier publicly rebuked in her September, and other players voiced their support.
Here's the uncomfortable reality many don't want to admit. Maybe the players who dislike Engelbert feel that way precisely because she refuses to give in to them. Maybe her effectiveness comes from her willingness to push back. Maybe the fact that she has generated this level of resistance while simultaneously growing the league proves she has been doing her job correctly. Commissioners aren't meant to be liked. They are meant to safeguard ownership interests, maintain labor stability, and expand the business. By those standards, Engelbert has delivered. But there's another, more cynical possibility. It's possible league leadership believes Engelbert has run out of political leverage. Perhaps they think the next stage of the WNBA's growth requires a different type of leader, someone more media-focused, more aggressive in public engagement, and more aligned with the social activism many players emphasize. Someone capable of navigating the racial and cultural tensions that intensified during Clark's rookie season without alienating either side. The timing of Silver's remarks is important. The new CBA is finalized. Expansion plans are locked in. The most difficult phase of Engelbert's tenure is complete. This would be a logical moment for a leadership change if ownership wanted one. Bring in a new face for the 2026 season when the new agreement begins. Allow someone else to benefit from the salary increases and revenue-sharing framework that Engelbert negotiated. That's often how corporate systems operate. One leader handles the hardest work, absorbs the criticism, delivers results, and then is replaced by someone with stronger optics who enjoys the rewards. It may sound harsh, but it's common. Now consider another possibility. What if Engelbert herself is ready to step away? 6 years of managing constant complaints from players, criticism from fans, scrutiny from the media, and unrealistic expectations tied to Caitlin Clark. 6 years as the public face of a league that frequently operates in a state of dissatisfaction. 6 years negotiating with players who expect NBA-level compensation despite vastly different revenue structures. That kind of pressure wears anyone down. She came from Deloitte with a highly respected career background. Maybe she simply reached her limit. Silver's wording supports that interpretation. He said he hasn't discussed her future plans or how long she wants to continue. That doesn't sound like someone preparing to fire her. It sounds like uncertainty about her own intentions. This could be mutual. Both sides may be ready to move forward separately. But here's where it becomes complicated for the league. If Engelbert is pushed out immediately after delivering a landmark CBA, it risks sending the wrong message. It could appear as if ownership is giving in to player pressure. It signals that sustained criticism of leadership can eventually force change. And that kind of precedent can create serious long-term consequences. And this is where the situation reaches its most critical turning point, because the league is no longer just managing a leadership question. It is managing a perception problem that could define its next decade. The WNBA is not operating in obscurity anymore. It is no longer a quiet, niche league working behind the scenes to build relevance. It is now under a national spotlight, driven largely by the explosive visibility surrounding Caitlin Clark and the broader surge in interest across women's basketball. That kind of exposure changes everything. Every decision is magnified. Every internal disagreement becomes a public narrative. And every leadership move carries consequences far beyond the boardroom. What makes this moment so volatile is the collision between business growth and cultural expectation. On one side, you have ownership groups and executives focused on expansion, media rights, and long-term profitability. On the other side, you have players who are increasingly empowered, increasingly vocal, and deeply invested in shaping the identity of the league. Those two forces don't always move in the same direction. In fact, they often clash. And the commissioner sits directly in the middle of that tension, absorbing pressure from both sides while trying to maintain stability. If Engelbert stays, the league risks continuing a dynamic where a portion of its player base feels unheard or dissatisfied. That tension doesn't just disappear. It lingers, it grows, and eventually it surfaces in ways that can disrupt team chemistry, public perception, and even sponsorship relationships. But if she leaves, the league faces a completely different risk. It opens the door to uncertainty at the exact moment when stability is most valuable. A leadership change during a period of rapid expansion and financial transformation can either accelerate progress or destabilize everything that has been built. There's also the question of timing, and timing in professional sports is never accidental. The new CBA is about to reshape player compensation. Expansion teams are preparing to enter the league. Media deals are becoming more valuable than ever before. This is not a rebuilding phase. This is a scaling phase. And leadership decisions made during scaling phases tend to have long-lasting structural impact. Replace the wrong person at the wrong time, and you don't just lose continuity, you risk losing momentum. Another factor that cannot be ignored is how the next commissioner will be perceived from day one. If a new leader is brought in, they will immediately be compared to Engelbert's results. They will be judged against record-breaking viewership, major sponsorship growth, and the foundation of a new financial model. That's an incredibly high bar to clear. And if that new leader is seen as being selected primarily to appease players or shift the league's tone, it could create a different kind of tension, this time from ownership groups who expect strong, disciplined leadership. Ultimately, what happens next will reveal how the league defines success. Is success purely measured in revenue growth and expansion, or is it measured in player satisfaction and cultural alignment? The answer isn't simple, and it's not binary. But the decision around Engelbert will show which side carries more weight when those priorities come into conflict. Because at its core, this isn't just about one commissioner. It's about the future direction of the WNBA as a business, as a cultural institution, and as a rapidly evolving professional league. And whichever path they choose next won't just shape the next season.